Hey, love, let's talk about what it means to rest in your feminine. The whole idea of femininity journeys and femininity coaches has become really popular lately. And to some extent, I think that that is a great thing, right? A lot of women simply aren't taught what it means to be feminine, what it means to fully embrace our womanhood. And I want to be clear that when I am talking about being feminine and embracing yourself as a woman, I am making a distinction between just talking about feminine energy because feminine energy is something that men have as well. It's not gender specific. As a woman, you have both masculine energy and feminine energy, just like men have both masculine energy and feminine energy. And honestly, one of the things about being a woman and being feminine is knowing how to properly use both energies. So you're not really embracing your femininity if you don't understand how to also use your masculinity as well. Now, that being said, again, I think it's really great that we're having these discussions about femininity. Um, it goes along with also talking about hypergamy and talking about dating and relationships and how that's changed for women nowadays and being in relationships that actually suit us now that as women we're not just housewives and caretakers, we also have education and we have careers as well. That being said, one of the issues that I have with a lot of these discussions coming up is that I was gonna bite back my tongue on this, but actually I'm not going to. One of my issues that I have is that it is training women to either A, be lazy or B, setting women up for failure. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of these femininity coaches are talking about like let the man do everything. You don't do anything. You need to constantly be served. You need to constantly rest in your feminine. Working is not feminine. You know, doing things that are hard, it's not feminine. If you think that you can get into a relationship with someone and they do all the work while you sit back and do nothing, you are sadly mistaken. And be real, you wouldn't want that to be the case for a man that you are in a relationship with. You wouldn't want to do all the work while he sat on his behind and did nothing. Also, this whole idea of letting the man lead and letting him do everything. Yes, in my heart of hearts, I there are parts of me, I will say, that are very traditional and I do love the idea of a provider and a protector. My husband is one. That is one of the reasons why I married him. At the same time, I don't let him make every single decision in my life. I have my own mind and I think for myself. When you go on and on about letting the man do all the things and how, you know, a woman should be resting in her feminine, there are women who don't understand the nuances of that, right? It is one thing to be with a man who you know is a good leader, who you know wants to protect you, who you know wants to provide for you and has your best interest at heart. Therefore, you know, you give him the floor on on a lot of decisions. You allow him to lead more because you trust him and you know that he also respects you and you have the type of relationship where the two of you can communicate and you can speak up about your desires, about your needs. It is a completely different thing altogether. And I've seen this happen before where women are told men are leaders, point blank, period, and your place is to shut up and be in the kitchen. And therefore, these women become people pleasers. They also lose themselves, they lose their identity in a relationship. And oftentimes, they end up in situations that are controlling and abusive because they were taught, oh, well, this is how it's done. You're supposed to allow the man to take over and handle everything and never speak up, even when you can see that this man is not a leader, even when you can see that this man doesn't manage money well and he's gonna lead the two of you and your finances down the drain. Even when you can see that this man does not have your best interest at heart and he just sees you as an accessory. So it's one of my issues with when we talk about femininity and this whole idea of resting in your femininity. um, a lot of the discussion is without nuance, and it is really important to make those distinctions. The second issue that I have is that to some extent, resting in your femininity is a privilege. The thing is, when we talk about masculine energy and feminine energy, even though there's supposed to be a balance within you and polarity is important both within yourself and within a relationship, masculine energy is a container for the feminine. It is when you have that safety that you're allowed to rest in the first place. And feminine energy is submissive in nature. So when a woman feels like she is safe, like she's protected, like she's with a man who shows good judgment and is trustworthy and honorable, then yes, she is going to be more likely to submit. And I don't mean that as in blindly following everything that he says, but back to this whole idea of resting in your femininity, it is trusting him enough to allow him to make decisions. It is trusting him enough to not worry about things all the time because you know that he has your back. So, what happens when that man is not there? And this is where the whole resting in your femininity is a privilege part comes from. The fact is, if a woman does not have that type of masculine energy support, and I say that because it doesn't necessarily have to come from a romantic partner, it could come from her father. You know, he could still be supporting her, come from a brother, it could come from female friends who are very supportive of her. And of course, you know, if we're talking same sex relationships, then it could come from a female romantic partner. But if a woman doesn't have that, she is forced to become more masculine. She's forced to be her own container. Um, she may be also forced to be a container for others as well. Think of the case of a woman who is a single mother. If there is no father influence in the home, then she has to take on both roles to some extent in order to protect her children. So she doesn't really have the same amount of privilege when it comes to resting in her femininity as a woman who is single and has no children, or especially she doesn't have the same amount of privilege as a woman who is married and in a healthy, loving marriage where she has that strong masculine container. Also, the whole idea of resting in your femininity, there was a time, you know, where women didn't work. So resting in your femininity was a little bit easier because, yes, you had work inside the home. And I don't want to diminish housework for women who are stay at home wives and stay at home mothers because, you know, cleaning, cooking, nurturing, caring for children, those things are difficult. But at the same time, nowadays, you are in situations where more often women are doing both. They are both taking care of a household even if it's just their own household, a household of one, and they are also out in the workforce, doing jobs or they have their own businesses. Because of that, the whole idea of resting in your femininity 100% of the time just can't happen. Um, Again, as women, we have both masculine and feminine energy, but especially when it comes to, having to be in the workforce and having to, provide for yourself, provide a living, even if you're choosing to work, even if you're choosing to have a business, if you're doing those things and you're out here working to make money, there are times that you have to lean more heavily into your masculine. Feminine energy is the energy of being. Masculine energy is the energy of doing. So if you're out here working, you're doing. Again, that makes resting in your femininity a much greater privilege because there are some women who have no choice but to work. They don't have any support, paying bills for them. The other issue that I have with this whole idea of resting in your femininity is not only is it a privilege financially, but it is a privilege emotionally and mentally as well. Back to what I was saying earlier, a lot of women simply were not taught how to be feminine because they grew up, being raised by a single mother who may have operated heavily in her masculine. And because she operated heavily in her masculine, she passed that down to her daughter. And, I'm not saying this to slam women who are single mothers, but if you are in survival and you're operating under survival, you're going to pass that same tendency down to your children, even if you are working hard so that they don't have to live in survival. Survival is not just the environment and being able to pay bills, it is a mindset as well. You know, Oftentimes the women who work with me come from situations where there was some sort of issue with the men in their life. So, fathers, uncles were either absent or just not great, not very affectionate, or cheaters, things like that. And because of this, they grew up surrounded by women who would constantly say, "Men ain't ish. You can't trust a man. All men are cheaters. Don't ever depend on a man. Go out there and get your own." And God bless the girl who has her own. It is great that women are capable of going out in the workforce, starting businesses. You know, as a Black woman, I saw a stat not too long ago that Black women are the fastest creators of businesses in the US right now. I'm incredibly proud of that. I think that's great. I also saw that Black women are the most educated in the United States right now as far as like most college degrees. Again, great. And I think we should go out there and work hard and, build up something for ourselves. Even if you have the intention of being a stay at home wife and stay at home mother, because there's nothing like having FU money. There's a lot of security and knowing that even if you choose to be taken care of, that you always have the freedom to leave if you need to. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of telling women to go out and work and get jobs and be in a position to take care of themselves. Um, it's an insurance policy. You could be in a relationship and it ends. You could be in a relationship and, your husband dies. You could be in a relationship and your husband becomes injured and can't work, and you may have to take on that role. So, the insurance policy aspect of it is a good thing. The problem with that is when you grow up in an environment where you're constantly told that you have to get your own, never depend on a man, when a man comes along who does want to take care of you, who does want to be a provider and a protector, you don't trust it. And because you don't trust it, because you've been programmed to not trust it, you won't allow him to come in and take care of you. You won't allow him to be that provider, to be that protector. You won't allow him to be in a position where you can, again, rest in your feminine and leave certain things, certain decisions up to him. And because of that, when you tell women, oh, just rest in your feminine, it's easy to say if you grew up in a two-parent household that was incredibly healthy, with parents who were very self-aware, with parents who were doing their inner work on themselves, and who taught you a lot about masculine and feminine energy and balance and polarity, and what it means to have a healthy relationship with yourself and a healthy relationship with others. The majority of us, that is not the case, right? The majority of us did not grow up like that. And if you did not grow up like that, and if you have not done this work on yourself, then getting into a relationship and then being told, "Oh, be feminine, rest in it," it's just not going to resonate with you. It's not gonna ring authentic to you. So you can try, but oftentimes, again, this ends up with women just being complete and total people pleasers. Um, this ends up with women taking it to the extreme and not having that balance, not knowing how to both trust a man to protect you, but also expect him to respect you and to still be able to speak your mind. You don't have that balance because you haven't done that work. This is why therapy is so important. This is why, you know, coaching, mentorships, accountability circles, this is why all of these things are really important. Doing the work on yourself allows you to see what your blind spots are. Um, and it is giving the teaching that, again, most of us women did not get. So, as you're on your journey of striving to find a healthy relationship, um, wanting to break those generational curses, part of breaking those generational curses is being willing to put in the work and being willing to put in the work with someone who can guide you. You know, that's why oftentimes when it comes to my clients, it's not uncommon for one of my clients to see me, go through coaching with me, to have that accountability, to have that dating strategy and all that, but to also see a therapist at the same time. Um, I myself often see coaches and therapists at the same time because, um, one, I believe in modeling that for my clients. I don't ask anyone to do something I wouldn't do for myself. But two, is helpful to me. Like, I know that I'm always gonna be growing, and I know that there are generational curses that I wanna break in my own family, but also there are things that are not necessarily curses, but things that I just want to model for when I have children of my own, and that is embracing the journey of growth and having that accountability and having someone to help guide you through it. So, again, this is, I don't say my issue with telling women to rest in their femininity, but this is how we make it more nuanced. And this is how we make it something that is actually feasible. It is by recognizing that it's going to be difficult to rest in your femininity if you haven't healed your inner wounds yet. It is going to be difficult to rest in your feminine energy if you aren't financially stable. I've had a couple of interviews on this podcast about women and money, and that's the reason why I've had those interviews because um, it's hard to rest. It's hard to be at peace if you're struggling with finances and debt, and if that's a constant worry for you. And also, it's really important that we remember that when we're resting in our femininity, we're able to do it because we have containers in place. You're able to be at peace with your life and in your relationships when you have boundaries and when you enforce those boundaries. You're able to be at peace with your life and you're able to rest in your femininity when you have a good support circle of healthy relationships, romantic, friendship, any type of relationship that you can think of. It's important to remember that when we are talking about our feminine journey, that feminine journey is understanding that there is a balance between our feminine energy and our masculine energy. And it is understanding that balance and operating unashamedly in that balance, knowing that when we talk about resting in our feminine energy, it is not an excuse to be lazy and just lie around and do nothing with no goals and no ambitions. It is an understanding that above all else, peace is the most important thing in my life. So, resting in my feminine journey means that I ditch any situation and I ditch any person that does not align with me being in peace. Resting in my femininity means that I have goals and I have dreams and ambitions, and I work towards those things and I ditch things that distract me from my purpose. Resting in my feminine energy means that I'm not afraid to be myself, that, you know, I embrace my authentic self, who I am, flaws and all. And it means that when I do the work and I'm operating in my purpose, I go to sleep at night knowing that I am doing the best I can to, as cliche as it sounds, to be the best me. I'm working on breaking those generational curses. I'm working on not overworking. I'm working on working from alignment and not hustle and grind. That's what resting in your feminine energy is. It means that I know that I have plenty of support in my life. I have a loving husband, I have great parents, I have great friends, and that I lean into that support circle. That is what it means to rest in your femininity. It is not, again, expecting people to do everything for you, and it is not giving over your power to somebody else to make all your decisions for you. I hope that you have found this explanation helpful. Let me know what you think. Head over to Instagram at Keisha Rice, KESHIARICE, and let me know what you thought of this episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And, thanks for joining me on Confidently Cherished. And I will talk to you soon. Love you.